Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about Double Dragon
Oh yeah.
2.
Oh yeah. I got a lot to say about this one, Bode.
Now, Aaron, the beat 'em up was still sort of in its nascent stages at the time of Double Dragon 1's release. And Double Dragon 2, it had kind of solidified itself in its alpha form.
Yeah.
Do you think that you can draw a clear line in the sand between, say, the release of Final Fight and everything that came before it?
For me, listen, for a hardcore sucker, they may not see it that way. For me, yes. Uh, the beat 'em ups really, to me, came of age with the system that Capcom introduced with Final Fight. Just the method for hit points, the method for the presentation, the way that you maneuvered around, the way that you grabbed, all the stuff that they added in, the different characters. I think Final Fight was great. It's funny. Me and my boy have gone through we went through all the Streets of Rage, and then we
Hmm.
just went through all the Final Fights. And
Now,
Final Fight,
when you and Luke play,
yeah.
are you playing in your room? Like, do you wheel in Luke's gaming chair and sit
No,
there? Or
we
do you
never
sit?
play here. We
Okay,
always This is something we only do at the River House.
okay,
It's special.
okay.
And so that's what we do. And we did. I don't know why we started doing it. I've been trying to. It's funny when we get up there. Luke doesn't want to play that many games, but
Hmm.
now he's into it. He wants to
Hmm.
always play one.
Okay.
And so when we went through all the Streets of Rage. There's a definite peak, and then there's a fall on those games. And Final Fight is sort of the same. I mean, really, I don't think they improved much on the first one, if I'm honest. And it was just more of the same. And that happened a lot because you get to the point where there's only so much you can do. Now, eventually, they improved on the beat 'em up as a whole. Capcom did, with stuff like and Cowboys Moon Mesa, or actually, I'm not. That may be Konami. What was I'm telling you, oh, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. That's what I'm thinking of. Or like Alien versus Predator. Like they really made those games more special. They added more stuff to do. Or the Punisher. But in the early days, you did get a lot of more of the same. And Double Dragon is sort of like, um, I would say it's not on par with Final Fight, Double Dragon 2, I should say, but it's definitely the progression from the first one. They tried to get a little more spicy with it, but it
Hmm.
still pretty much holds to the formula, and that seems to be what those beat 'em ups used to do. They didn't stray too far from the path of their own series most of the time.
What was it that made Final Fight so much different and so much better than the sort of proto beat 'em ups that came before it?
Well, the graphics helped a lot, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
huge jump in graphics, I
And
would
I
say.
will say, Double Dragon for its time, had tremendous graphics. And Double Dragon 2 looks good too in the arcade. They're both good looking games, but Final Fight has that hand drawn. It's the same thing with Street Fighter 2. Those beautiful hand drawn graphics that you would come to see more as the years went on. And it's also something the Neo Geo got a lot of that real pretty graphical fidelity that you didn't see that much in those other series. I mean, think of all the series, the beat 'em ups that just didn't go anywhere. Your Renegades and stuff. I know those are bigger overseas than they are here, but like no one talks about Renegade anymore, for
Yeah,
example.
it's always spoken with in hushed tones in the
Yeah,
UK. Here, we just don't care.
yeah, or Crime Wave or
Mhm.
whatever. Like those are just games. It's like, eh. And I would say Double Dragon 2 is somewhere maybe slightly above those. But Final Fight's a quantum leap. I'm not quantum, but I'd say a sizable leap from
Mhm.
those games. But I mean, I love a good beat 'em up. I've played tons.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say you're a huge fan of beat 'em ups. You never get tired of just taking out suckers?
well, yes, I do get tired of it. One of the problems with a lot of games is that it's the same suckers.
Right.
How many times can you take out sucker A? I mean, I've beaten
Mhm.
the tar out of this guy, and just because he's tougher, it doesn't. I get no more satisfaction from killing him. You know, that's a perennial issue with these games. If you go and play something like Beats of Rage, I don't know if you've ever tried any of the games in Beats of
Uh-uh.
Rage. Beats of Rage is an open source. It's an open source make your own beat 'em up producer based, sort of like the Scorpion engine for beat 'em ups on like the PC.
Okay.
And it got ported to a bunch of stuff. Xbox has got it. All the places have it. Anyone can really play them. But like they try to be a lot more widespread because they know people get bored of fighting the same stuff. So that's kind of fun. So you could make it where you fight tons of different people, but on the consoles in the arcade back in the day, it just didn't happen. It's understandable. But there are some games that break the mold, like the Dungeons and Dragons series, for example, where you have a ton more different enemies than you would have.
Mhm.
So yeah, but this game we're still coming out of the early days with Double Dragon 2.
Yeah. Would you like to see sort of a Mugen, I don't know how you say it, system for a
Mugen.
beat 'em up where you might be able to fight, I don't know, like one of the bad guys from Cowboys from Mumesa, and then all of a sudden a Bobo comes rolling in. Would
It
you like to see a
exists.
mashup like okay.
Beats of Rage does that.
Oh,
Anything that has
okay.
art, you can pull. Mugen and Beats of Rage sort of work on the same principle. Go
Hmm.
steal art, step one, and then put it in this engine, step two. That's effectively what you do. Now I'm simplifying it obviously, but yeah, that's what Beats of Rage is. And I mean, there have been some incredible games made with Beats of Rage. There's a Masters of the Universe game that's like off the charts, for example, beat 'em up. And there are other stuff. I mean, I haven't really dipped my toe in that pool for a while. It's something I should probably do a show one sometime at the Beats of Rage because it's so much fun. But this game, it was way, way, way before anyone thought about doing something like that. This is the original on the arcade hardware. It was still a step up from Double Dragon graphically, but again, you've got to mature gameplay elements and come up with new ideas. And this wasn't far enough for Double Dragon 1 to have came up with a ton, in my opinion.
Mm. All right, Aaron, let's talk about this week's game, Double Dragon 2.
Here.
Okay.
All right, Bo. We're gonna start the comparison off here, if you will, by having a look at the original Double Dragon 2 from the arcade.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a real special game for me because this is the very first arcade game that I ever owned. At some point, probably I'd say in like 2013, probably, you gave me a call and you're like, "Hey, me and the Brent are at some barn somewhere, and they've got this Double Dragon 2 machine. They want like $100 for it. You want it?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I want it." And so it was written, so it was done, and the Double Dragon 2 appeared at my door. And it was
But just before you get into that, I hadn't thought about this forever. That was a quote unquote raid. It's one of the rare times that me and Brent were invited to go to one of these things locally. And when the place that these games were stored had taken a ton of water, all right.
mm,
And so I can't tell you how many games, and this happens occasionally when you go to these warehouses or storage areas, where games like people don't realize that if arcade machines get wet, they effectively turn to mush.
mhm.
I mean, and I actually saw some like melted cabinets at this thing. It was the darndest thing I ever saw. It's just a big pile of mush with electronics and a TV sitting on it, And when I saw this Double Dragon, because I talked to me and Britt are always like, "Hey, do we want this?" And I wasn't a big Double Dragon fan, but it was one of the few machines there that was in really good shape, and it wasn't. Um, it still worked, and they weren't asking anything for it. That's why.
Right.
So I had to call. It's like, who do I know that might want this? And there was only one man crazy enough to try to put this in his basement. That was you, and that's who I called.
That's right. That's right. And so, if you recall, the way that it worked, this was back when you still had the truck, back when you were
Yeah.
a man and you drove around a truck. And you back the truck down the hill beside my house, and then we just kind of hoisted it off the side of the truck and through the walk-in, because I've got like a walk-in basement that's built on the side of a hill. And we wheeled it in, and it fired right up. It worked right away, and it was fantastic. And so the first thing I wanted to do was like, all right, this is working good, but the monitor is kind of not looking so great. So I opened it up. And I successfully recapped the monitor on my own. I was very proud of myself for doing that.
Yes, that's excellent work. Did you get this
And
before the pinball machine boat?
yeah,
Refresh my memory.
this was before the pinball machine.
All right.
And then I was like, okay, well, I've done that. The sticks on this are not the best. Well, I mean, it depends on your school of thought, because there are people out there that really like leaf switches. I'm just not one of those people. I like a satisfying click when I move a stick. And
Yes,
so
I'm right there with you, boat.
I put in the micro switch sticks with the light up tips. I had
Oh
blue and
yeah,
red in there,
yeah.
and replaced the buttons. And then the final step, and this was the longest step, is that I turned this thing into a full fledged MAME cabinet with the CRT. I did not install a LCD screen. With your help and guidance, I was running an old. Actually, this thing ran off the old Wayback Machine that you built for me way back in like 2009.
Yeah,
This was built on a HP thin client,
yeah.
I stuck that thing in there, and there's a program that you ran that would down. I don't know if it's down sample. It would change
It would match the resolution for an arcade monitor.
right.
Yeah,
It would match that resolution. And again, all of this stuff I could have never done without your help. So
that's an
you
old
were
trick of mine from back in Kentucky. Was it running out of DOS? Do you remember what it
yeah.
ran at? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. It was running. It was XP. It was running on
Okay.
XP. And so anyway, I had this thing, and it was great. It was great. I sat there and I played it, and I played it, and I played it. And then you were like, "Hey, I'm getting ready to tear down my building in my backyard. Do you want the Mud Mountain main machine?" And I was like, "Well, yes, I do." And so before I knew it, I had two arcade machines. And so I fixed that one up, and then before you knew it, I had two main machines. But then, as I was pondering my life and the decisions that I made, I thought, well, maybe having two main machines is not strictly necessary. And so I ended up selling on the Double Dragon 2 machine to another local fellow, and keeping the Mud Mountain main machine that I currently have. And so I ended up owning that Double Dragon 2 for probably less than a year. Within the space of like a year and a half, I went from having zero arcade machines to having three arcade machines and a pinball machine. So
You know,
it's
I love that story, and I'll tell you why. Because it's for selfish reasons. I used to have the jack. I mean, I swear to God. I mean, I'm not the. I had some jack back in the day, and rigging up stuff like that was my speciality. And now I've got no jack, and the reason I lost is because they took the fun out of it. Now everything does everything all the time. But back in the day, to get a proper MAME cabinet, like I had one before anyone had one. I built the interface myself. I had to go and find the thing to change the frequencies. I mean, I was real proud of that. And I'd forgotten all this until you mentioned it, and it makes me happy because at least in the time I've known you, I still had a little bit of the jack left before I lost it.
oh
Because now I
yeah,
don't have any jack now.
the
Unfortunately.
jack was in full force back in the day. And
And
so,
I will say that was a beautiful machine, and you did what a lot of guys do, which is when they get an arcade machine. I didn't mean to turn this into the let's get an arcade machine hour, but when you got that thing, you wanted to make it look awesome. You wanted to make it play good. You wanted to make it special, and you did. And recapping that monitor, that's no easy feat, brother. That was, I mean, God bless you. You did good work. I recapped one that didn't work for years until I went there and figured out what I did wrong. I mean, you could botch one, and for someone like yourself, and I've seen your handiwork, it could be a
yeah,
Doug
by no means am I a master at the soldering iron. So it's somewhat of a miracle that it worked at all, let alone worked as well as it did. So anyway, this is a very special game
Yes.
because of its connection to my arcade. But you didn't come here to hear that. You came here to hear about Double Dragon 2, The Revenge. Is there a better subtitle than The Revenge?
Well, no, that's the best one you could have.
It's the best one you could have. This was developed by Technos Japan. Technos Japan, a very prolific outfit that
Yeah,
was
they are.
operating, of course, in Japan, they were behind some of the very best arcade games back in the day. Their first arcade game I've never heard of. It came out in '82. It was called Minky Monkey. I got nothing on that one,
Donkey
but
Kong clone, maybe.
maybe so. But then starting in 1984, July of 1984, it was on like Donkey Kong. They released Karate Champ, and then it was all over because that was a huge smash hit. And to this day, still one of the most accurate portrayals of one-on-one real karate tournament style fighting there is.
We love that game, don't we, Bode?
That's
I, rem-
right.
I had a great time playing that at Boat Fest a couple years ago. It's so much fun playing that game. It is an all-time classic. And then Technos, they did so many good games after that. They really went on a tear, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. So they did one of your absolute all-time favorite games of all time, Map Mania. Do you
Yep.
know, Aaron, the Japanese title for Map Mania?
Yeah, exciting hour.
Bam! I knew you were an expert. Then they went on, they did, and then of course they got into the beat 'em up scene real early on, Renegade, which was originally titled something like Japanese high school kid punk battling the bad guys.
That's a better
And
name. It
yeah,
tells you
and
what you're
so
getting.
when it came to the US, they dropped the whole like high school student gimmick and they just made you a thug. Then that game was of course redone as Target Renegade from a UK developer and went on into the halls of glory there, where they again speak of it in hushed tones. And then in 1987, lo, it came to pass. Double Dragon was released, and the world was never the same. This was the
Yeah,
first time that you really had a quality sort of, like I say, proto modern a beat 'em up game.
yeah,
But Technos was not just known. There are a lot of companies, that once they have a hit game, they only make that game forever and ever and ever.
yeah.
Technos continued to make various other kinds of games past that,
You
but
got
they
that right.
always had a Technos sort of look to them. The
Yeah.
way that their characters were drawn was sort of famous.
Data
They came
East is
out,
like that too. They have a
yeah,
definitely it's an art style there. I
right,
agree.
right. And so Super Dodgeball was a game that you immediately you knew it was a Technos game because of the way that the characters were drawn. I'm not a huge beat 'em up fan, but my absolute favorite beat 'em up of all time was released by Technos Japan, which is River City Ransom. This is a game for the NES. It didn't get an arcade release, but it combined elements of role playing with beat 'em ups. So you had to do things like, buy upgrades, go to the library, eat, stuff like that. So I love that. Also, Super Spike V-Ball is the volleyball game that I played more than any other video game, any other volleyball game. And they made that. They made Nintendo World Cup, which is a great NES soccer game. And Aaron, finally, in 1991, they developed the one and only WWF WrestleFest. Now, in
And
your
Superstars. They did
it,
Superstars too.
oh, you're right. They did Superstars
Yeah.
first and then WrestleFest.
Yes.
Now, in the pantheon of arcade wrestling games, does it get better than WrestleFest?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't get. In fact, if they run the root, they rule the roost. Because if I had to place them in an order, it would be WrestleFest, Superstars, and Matt Mania. All three of them. They're all great. I mean, you could. If some people would say tag team wrestling, which is the Data East, I believe, did that one, but I don't think it's in the same stratosphere. Some people would say that Midway's WrestleMania would be there, but again, it's as good as it looks. It doesn't play like Superstars. Superstars is a king dong. Technos, I got mad respect for the programmers over there. They were great. I believe they also did. Didn't they also do the Dead or Alive series? Wasn't that them as well?
No, they were gone
Really?
by like 1994.
Oh, my bad.
So you might be thinking about Tecmo.
I
Tecmo
may
and
be. I
Technos
may
are,
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
very very close together. And so but anyway, the Technos Japan, developers of this game. This is a single player or two player co-op game, just like the original Double Dragon. The development team was headed up by Yoshishisha Kishimoto, and the musical composer was Kazuanka Yamane. And this game goes down over 4 different stages. You have the heliport, the lumber storehouse, a farm, and then the gang's hideout.
These
These are some
stages.
odd stages, Aaron. I'm not going to lie
Let's
to
play it on a farm. I mean,
you. This is the
I
only
like
game
that
that
damn
I can
street
think
plug.
of where
Yeah.
you are in active combat against like a wheat
A
combine.
thresher.
Yeah, a
Whatever.
thresher.
It is when you I didn't think about it until you spelled it out, but when you're fighting street plugs in front of a pasture of cows and you're throwing around logs, it's a weird thing. It's a weird tangent to go down.
Yeah. So, Aaron, tell me about your experience playing Double Dragon 2. Did you play it in the arcades back in the day?
I did. It's funny. I played it mostly at your house. So, but I did play it. I played Double Dragon and this in the arcade. It's funny. I thought both of them were hard games. I thought in the arcade. They're the kind of games that you can get good at and do better, and in the arcade. But it's funny. I didn't really get into these sorts of games. I mean, you got to think. I believe this came out what 89. I believe
88.
it was 88, and like there was there was a lot of good stuff in '88, and like so this thing was in a crowded arcade. But I mean, I did play it some. This is not the kind of game. I think the kind of game where of this variety that I would play to completion. Really, Final Fight was one of the first ones going forward on that. This was not one that I ever played in the arcade to completion. I did play to completion at your house, but
Mhm.
not in the arcade. So yeah, I would say I've had a cup of coffee with this one.
Yeah. This is not one that I ever played in the arcade. Like I said, there's only a year separates the release of Double Dragon 2 and Final Fight. And I mean, you
Yeah,
want to talk about a sea change in terms of graphical fidelity. I mean,
yeah.
Final Fight, let's be honest, it blows this game out of the water.
But it looks
But
better than Double Dragon 1. I
yeah,
will say
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Um, this is one that, I played mostly the NES version, which comes to no help because the NES version, like so many NES ports, they totally redid the entire game for the NES version. So none of the levels are the same. And it
Does it
didn't
have
really.
two-player boat?
It does have two player.
Okay.
The original sin of the first Double Dragon game that came out on the NES is that it only had one player, and they put in a kind of a really rudimentary one-on-one fighting mode
Yeah.
that you could
Yeah.
play that didn't make up for the lack of two players simultaneous. So that
It
was
is
that.
it is funny if you think about it, Bo, because when Final Fight came out on the SNES, it also only had one player.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
it
You're
is
right.
wacky to think about the two flagship titles, and they released them crippled effectively
Yeah, yeah,
because they only
you're
added one
exactly right.
player.
I never thought about that, but yeah, it's weird how they didn't learn from that first mistake, and that was a huge letdown. Well, I remember when Final Fight was released on the SNES, people were losing their minds because they were like, "Why didn't you make the whole fun of beat 'em ups is playing with the buddies?" So
The funny thing is, me and Luke played Final Fight 2 on the SNES. That's the only place it was released, and it has two players, and it works great. So I don't know why they didn't do it. Maybe they had more
yeah.
memory to work with or something. I don't know.
Yeah. The game is notable for having a three button layout. You have a forward attack, a rear attack, and a jump. And the way that the buttons are aligned is they look like it's like a triangle shaped control panel where you have three buttons. Can you think of other three button games from the time period?
Well, this is I mean, not of this nature. No, none jumping in my mind where you're. It's not the worst idea, but I mean, is it sort of pointless? I mean, kinda. I think because you don't necessarily. But it is nice to be able to attack immediately from the other direction.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Well, I mean, I think that this is one of these things where when you think about a six button controller layout, like was standardized with Street Fighter, you have punch and kick at three different strengths, essentially.
Yeah.
This game took a different tack where you have a forward attack and a rear attack. And I think it's kind of cool. One of the things that I love doing is, you're pounding an enemy with your fists. You got somebody sneaking up behind you, bam, you hit them with that back kick right to the gut. I mean, that's a satisfying feeling. So I'm a fan of the three button layout. Unless you're playing something like Sodan where you're only attacked from one direction.
It
There's
needs
no
it bad.
Yeah,
That way,
yeah.
it's funny you were mentioning this. I did think of a game that's similar. I
hmm
used to own this game called Time Killers. I'm a big fan of this game, but it's generally hated. But you had four buttons for one for your each arm and one for each leg, and then you had a fifth button that was for your head. And so
Oh,
you would
wow.
use these to attack. So that was, I mean, that's not exactly the same, but you're literally sinking out your limbs. Of course, in that game, you could actually get your limbs cut off. So that was, whenever you hit that button, it would just squirt blood out of the stump, which was kind of funny to me. But yeah,
So
otherwise, I can't think of one.
by the time that you were at Marshall, I mean, let's see, this game came out in 88. You were
Yeah,
at Marshall in 89, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So I mean, we talk about most of our listeners know about the student center by now, and sort of what a mecca it was to arcade lovers.
Well,
Did this
actually, it
game
wasn't that
ever
great.
make it to the student center?
No. In fact, the entire time I was at Marshall, the student center always had the same games. They had Bad Dudes and they had Tetris. Those were the
Mm,
games. That's all.
really?
But there was an arcade across the street though. But when I started going there, guess what they had? WWF Superstars, which came out after this. So this would have came out and been in popular arcades probably the summer that I wasn't really going to arcades and hadn't lived in Huntington yet. So I did catch this at the gold mine when I would get down there, but this isn't one I would play down at Marshall.
Okay, okay. Well, I did some research and I was trying to find some chart performance because I always like to know how these games did.
Yeah,
In April 1989, Game Machine listed Double Dragon 2 as the seventh most successful table arcade unit of the month. So even in its homeland, like you said, it was such a crowded time in
yeah.
the arcade scene. It was tough to make headway. And so I would say that this is probably a game that you had to have a Double Dragon 2. It was such a big success, the original version, that you had to
Yeah.
have a sequel. But you were facing some stiff competition by
Let's
this point.
let's discuss this for a second because you'll recall Double Dragon, a mega success. I mean, this
Yeah.
thing was one of the biggest arcade games of that era. And so one would think, now this I'm putting on my arcade owner hat here. And it's funny because me and Brent had the same conversation. We talked about Time Pilot 84. So it seems natural that you would use Double Dragon 2 to upgrade all those Double Dragon 1 cabinets. You put a new marquee in that thing, wham, bam, Bob's your uncle. When you add an extra button to the mix, though, that really complicates things. And
Hmm.
so one would assume that now you've got to swap out the control panel. Now, this Time Pilot 84 was the same way. And so I can only assume, having not been an arcade operator, I would be pissed, I'll tell you that, because then you have to drill out an extra hole or you have to buy a new control panel. And maybe that was part of the scheme. Maybe if you had to buy a new control panel from Tecmo that was a money earner for them. I don't know, but it surprises me that
Well,
they would make
there
that change.
Well, Double Dragon 2 was actually initially developed as an upgrade kit to the
Yeah, that's
original
what I
Double
figured.
Dragon, but there was so much, I mean, according to Wiki, there was so much of an increase in memory size that they had to make a new board, and I guess by the time that they did that, then they just decided to make a new, control panel and everything. So this was not available as a conversion kit. I understand
Really?
what you're
I'm
saying,
surprised. Yeah.
but I think that this game is sufficiently advanced beyond. I mean, it's sort of like you can't. It's like between Mortal Kombat 2 and Mortal Kombat 3. You couldn't make a conversion kit for those two games.
Well, I mean, the thing is that you can put a MK3 board in an MK2. That's the problem. Like I don't know what the interface was on Double Dragon 2, but if it was the same as the first one in terms of how you plug it into the machine, it surprises me that they would add an extra button to the mix because, like I said, that makes it tougher for the arc. That may have cost them, frankly, because think of all the Double Dragon machines you saw. And I mean, I don't know how many you saw, but I saw tons of them. Well, how many Double Dragon 2 machines did I see? Not so many. And if they'd said, here you go, here's a plug-in swap for Double Dragon 2, I have a feeling you'd see it a lot more. And it scored higher on the charts. That's just a guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Aaron, let's move on and talk a little bit about the Amiga version of Double Dragon 2.
Absolutely. So, of course, that's what we're here for. We're going to talk about the Amiga version, Double Dragon 2, released in 1989, boat. So not too long after the Big Dog came out, we got this thing. And this was it's funny, it's just another Virgin game. This is Virgin Mastertronic, the publisher. They were responsible for the Clue games, one of the perennial Amiga's favorites, New York Warriors, Supremacy, Magic Johnson's Basketball. The developer of this was Binary Design. If you look over their portfolio, Boat, you're going to see stuff like Shinobi, Steve Davis, World Snooker. Steve Davis, by the way, World Snooker. I've seen him play in snooker. So it's funny. Those snooker games, they keep paying off, Boat, well into the future. They played Vector Ball, but here's what we got to play, Boat. Binary Design made a game called Speedboat Assassin.
Oh
Put
my
that on
god.
the list. Amiga Game Selection Committee, Speedboat Assassin. You've got to be a special kind of assassin to be a speedboat assassin. That's hardcore. I almost hit a tire that flew out the bottom of a trailer that was hauling a speedboat just the other day. So a speedboat almost killed me indirectly. So
Oh my
technically,
god.
the guy driving this truck was a speedboat assassin. He missed the mark because I'm still here. This was, of course, they bought the license from this from Technos. This was coded by Richard Applin. Boy, this guy's portfolio boat. Of course, eSWAT, but the two ones that stayed out to me, Final Fight and The Godfather. These are neither
Okay.
of these games are what I would call top shelf games.
All-time classics, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
he also did a lot of Fire. The other code on this is Gary Vine. He never did anything else. The graphics were made by this outfit called the Picture Element. It's a whole outfit boat. Who did Motorbike Madness aside from this, and the music on this, Tomas Dahlgren, Steve Barrett, and Richard Applin. This is an OCS joint, one disc boat on this one. 1999 when it was released, 19 pounds, 99p. And this got released all over the world on everything, ranging from the DOS, the ST, the C64, the Speccy, MSX, Amstrad, and the Genesis. And this has also been ported to newer machines like the PS4, the Switch. You do have one or two players on this as well. So, I've played this game for years in the arcade boat. And one of the things that this game hangs its hat on is the disturbing opening refrain as you start the game. When you start this game, you get to see the girl that you rescued in the first game get shot and killed. Right, but the first thing you see,
It's one of the oddest opening scenes that I've ever seen because. I realize this is Double Dragon 2: The Revenge.
Yeah.
But at some point, these guys have just got to know, hey, they've seen this girl get killed. Let's just call the cops and tell them that we saw this girl get killed.
Yeah.
Well, they can't kill the girl.
Law.
They've already killed her. They've got nothing hanging over their heads.
Yeah, well, get this boat. So first of all, the Amiga version, it doesn't show that at all. I bet none of the home versions show it. I'm not gonna say it's graphic, but it is surprising when she hotly saunters out of the hangar with the helicopter, and the bad guys come up and just shoot her, and then she dies.
Lower down, yeah.
So get this, I looked into the backstory. Thank God that Lemon had the documentation on this because this story is absolutely bonkers. Did you know the backstory of this game?
No.
I'm assuming this is not the backstory of the arcade machine, okay? So, basically, in the first game, the Jimmy and Billy killed off all the bad guys, the Black Warriors, all but a couple, okay? But they didn't kill all of them, it says. There was one surviving member, Linda, okay?
Okay.
So, she nursed herself back to health. According to the documentation, she spent several years studying ancient martial arts of healing. Okay, she used this power to raise the gang from the dead. Okay, according to this.
Okay.
And she also raised the bad guy from the dead. And then, of course, the bad guy's like, "Cool, I'm going to give you a higher rank in the gang." I'd be kind of pissed off if I was Linda, but still, I guess higher rank. So then, the leader of the Black Warriors, is a guy called Willie, because that's such a cool gang name, Willie. So Willie's like, I'm heading up for this. I'm not screwed around this time with the girlfriend of the Lee brothers. That's when he shoots the chick. And then, according to these documentations, he takes her remains and skips town. Now, in the arcade, you don't see that. But in the home, you don't see it in the home version either. But according to these, he grabs her remains and leaves with him. Well, guess what? Jimmy and Billy, they're pissed. That's where the revenge comes in. And so they've got to start fighting their way through these gimmicks. Now, here's the part that I question. So at the end of this thing, if you beat the boss, it says, this is directly from the docs, with the warrior is finally eradicated and Marion restored to the peak of health, Billy, Jimmy, and Marion will pass through a portal into another space-time continuum and hopefully live a long and peaceful life.
So they really bring in like the metaphysical element there.
None of this comes through in the game because the ending of this game is just like the arcade. So I don't know. I guess for the sake of the children, They wanted to make you think that Marion was alive at the end of the
Right,
game.
just in a
The
different space-time
arcade,
continuum.
but the thing is, at the end of the game, you can see a picture of Marion, and like tears fall from it. She's dead.
Really? A
She's
weeping
dead.
picture, like the
Yeah,
Virgin Mary.
I beat not the Virgin Mary. Well, I mean, I assume not. Just a regular
Right, but
Miss
I mean, like,
Marion.
yeah, does the picture weep?
I sort of, yeah. It sort of
Hmm.
does. It's a very strange. It's I don't know what they're going for here, but so apparently you could actually save Marion if you go back and get her remains. Go figure. Doesn't none of this plays anything to do with the game. This game, just like you expect, you play Billy or Jimmy and you go through the game. This starts off with a scene, just like you mentioned at the arcade machine. Well, this actually starts off with a long scroll.
Yeah,
Did,
nothing
did you
nothing gets you hyped like a long scroll.
did you read the scroll? It does set you up on this. That because I mean it goes on forever. In fact, and this is if you're watching the video, this is me playing it, and the scroll right here is on 4 times speed, just so just to make it quicker. Okay, so I want to make sure that you understand how long the scroll was. Then you start out, you don't see Marion get killed. You're at the heliport, and you go to work. Now, what's the difference between this game, Boat, and what's the major difference between this and the arcade version?
Well, I mean, to me, the major difference is the controls. There's
That's
only one
exact
button.
correct
Yeah.
answer, Bode. That's why you're at the top of your game, my friend. It's the controls. You're going down from 3 buttons to 1 button. Okay, so the controls in this are set up extensively differently from the arcade. If you don't press the button, you just move around basically. If you unless you hit certain directions, if you hit the button, every direction does a different sort of move. When I played this game, I didn't get that kind of vibe. I read the docs after I played the game, and in the game, I could punch, I could kick, I could fly and kick. That's pretty much all I needed. But there are other moves in the game. But I will say, if you play this in the arcade, you're going to have access to the moves, and they're going to be a lot easier to pull off. Wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like so many games that we play on the Amiga that are arcade ports. Things that are, it doesn't take you a thought to do. You have to enter in a complex series of motions and sort of pray to the gods that it will work out all right for it to actually happen.
Pray to the Amiga gods. Now,
Yeah.
having played this in the arcade, I mean, you're intimate with the arcade machine. You're the predominant man when it comes to asking about the arcade machine. How do you think they did it on adapting the controls to the Amiga here?
Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you,
That's that's your opening line. You're right. You're right.
you've got two options. Okay, you can do a button plus direction, or you can do the lion heart, which is hold down the button and then push a direction.
They did both.
And to me, this is there are other issues that I have with this game. They did the best that they could with the controls, other than doing what they should have done and just programming in a second button option. I mean,
Uh,
this came out late enough in the game.
I don't know. Did it? I mean, this is
Yeah.
pretty. I don't know. I don't think they were doing a lot of second button options in '89.
Well,
That's
I
pretty
don't know.
early.
I don't.
Yeah.
When do you think the second button came to play?
I mean, really, in a lot of ways, it never did. I mean, there are some games that got the second button, but this did not support the second button. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say on that. I would love
Yeah,
to
I
have seen
mean,
a second
the
button.
Amiga from Jump Street supported two button controllers. This was not like an AGA development or anything like that.
Probably didn't
It just
support that many. That it
it
didn't come up that often.
it's just something that developers chose not to take advantage of for whatever reason. And so it's fine. It's fine. My biggest issue with this game is not the controls as much as it is the AI. The,
Yeah,
the
I guess.
AI this game unleashes. I mean, it's a beat 'em up. There's lots of guys that are on the screen at once. Now, in this game's defense, I didn't run into a lot of slowdown in this game. It definitely doesn't suffer from the same problems the NES has when there's lots of sprites on the screen at once. The game just crawls.
Yeah.
This game never really slows down, but the enemies tend to clump up together,
Yes.
and they just and sometimes they don't necessarily attack you. Sometimes they'll just kind of move back and forth as if they're doing like the zombies in the Thriller music video. They'll take a couple steps forward, they'll all kick together. They'll take
Yeah.
another couple steps in the other direction, they'll all kick together, and then maybe they'll notice you. And when they notice you, they don't necessarily attack you, they just want to be your friend. They just kind of surround you. And then you're just stuck and you don't know who you're attacking. You don't know what you're doing because there's like 18 enemies stacked on top of your sprite and you're just kind of hitting the button hoping for the best. And the best is not good because you're dead. You're dead is what that means. So that was really that's really my main problem with the game.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong. And if you watch this again, this is me playing the game. Like these guys are drawn to you, and they just come in and they lumber forward for better or for worse. Some of them will attack you, some won't. You know, as you get further in the game, they're a lot more aggressive. So when you get a clump of bad guys on you, you're boned, which you'll see when you get to the last boss here. But early in the game, the clumping is good because you just throw a high kick and you hit like 6 guys.
Right.
I wish
right.
real life was like that. Where like one kick, can you imagine how big a stud you could be if you were a real good kicker? And like you could kick 6 guys with 1 foot. How does that work? Are you knocking them back into the other guys? Is that what's happening?
I think what it is your kick. You've just got a very very long foot or a wide foot.
Incredibly wide.
Yeah.
He's a size 27C. He's like El Gigante. He's got a monster foot. But I mean, most of the time during the early stages of this game, I would just jump kick or punch.
Yeah.
And punch until they fell over. The problem is, if you just sit there and punch them, it takes forever. I mean,
that's they're really the biggest problem. I don't know. Every time I say something else, I'm like,
yeah, there's more big problems.
There's lots of big problems here, but the enemies in this game are total bullet sponges.
Did you see that guy? He just fell off the side for no reason. He just jumped to his death.
I did chuckle every time that happens. Where the guys come out, they're like, yeah, and then.
It's great during the Thresher stage where you just lure them into the Thresher and they just repeatedly get mauled. At least they get hurt by the stuff, which makes it more fun.
That's
right. You can throw them off the side. You can throw them off ledges and stuff. It's kind of fun.
This game suffers from what I like to call the Bayou Billy enemy strategy.
Yes. It's not that hard.
Yeah, but I mean, they've made the guys you have to kick them way, way, way too many times. The little thug guys, they need to go down once and stay down, or maybe even twice. But most of these guys in this game, you got to knock down a minimum of 3 times before they die.
There's about 5 or 6 guys, maybe 7 in the game, bad guys, not counting bosses. And then you occasionally will come across an item you can pick up. And now the arcade has way more stuff to pick up. You can pick and more obstacles than the Amiga version's got. The arcade also has like things that happen. Like that are not like for example in the first level, when you finish the helicopter stage, you'll get in an elevator and just go to the next area. In the Amiga version, he just beams into the next area, and it's just like area 2. You know, and that's when you're fighting on it's the farm stage of the Old West, wherever the hell it is. But the party gets pooped on pretty quick when the cartwheeling idiot comes in. And then eventually the stick idiot comes in.
Can you imagine a real life gangster just cartwheeling on?
That would be impressive, though, if you saw it. Like, look at that, cartwheel. You don't see that. There's a wrestler called Jake Cartwheel, okay?
Really?
Guess what he does? Yeah. He does a crap load of cartwheels. He does all kinds of offensive maneuvers out of a cartwheel. So there is precedent to hurt people with a cartwheel.
Is he on the indie circuit?
Oh, yeah, big time. You got that right. Occasionally, you'll pick up, like, amongst the things you can pick up is a box, a whip, and then sometimes you'll pick up, if you look at the video, I've got something that's either a shovel or a double-headed axe. I never quite figured out what it was, but I used it quite effectively in the farm level. The farm level is the most wacky level. I will say they did put audio in for the cows, which I appreciated. There's mooing in the game.
There's quality development time spent right there.
This game's incredibly short, and I was ready to unload on the game for being so short. But guess what? The arcade game is just as short.
Right.
I mean, it's really short, and so you could buzz through this game in probably 15 minutes. I will say one thing I learned is
I was not able to beat this game.
I beat it. Of course, I had an unlimited man.
So did I. Well, I'll talk about my once we get to the end. I'll tell you.
Yeah, but the 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 problem is you get to a point in the game where it just stops being fun. Now
Yeah.
it could be fun with me. I remember me and you years ago. If you go back in our infinite archives, and God bless you if you do. There's video of me and Boat playing this in my arcade years ago.
Hmm.
We used to get together on Sunday mornings
Right.
and play games, and we played all the Double Dragon games. I thought we beat them all, but that was wrong. We played this till we just gave up because we thought it sucked. And you can see us like doing our best. So I mean, we played this 1 and 2 player, and 2 player would be better, but I don't think they changed the amount of guys that come out for 2 people. I think you get the full amount as 1 player. Because as you get further into this game, they really start to overwhelm you with the competition,
So
and it
I
makes it
have
a lot
a
harder.
I have a date here. The date of which we played Double Dragon 2,
All
November
right,
22nd, 2017.
all right. So it's been a while. You don't think the current viewers or listeners remember that?
Well, that video has 113 views, so I'm
Bam!
guessing not
One
a
of
lot
our
of
best
listeners
ones
have
from back
watched that.
then. We hit triple digits. Not too bad. Um, Eventually, once you get past the farm and you make your way up to the actual mansion of the guy, they really start to overwhelm you. I will say the level between the mansion, there's like this, like I don't know, it's cliffside or whatever. It is fun to knock geeks into the chasm, and it's something else I noticed. But I want to ask you about this. Whenever at the end of every level, there's a bad guy that comes out. Sometimes he's a big, tall guy. In this case, as we're watching now, it's a guy with 2 sticks, the old stick guy.
Big
And like
guy.
I pummeled these guys. They were worthless. They sucked. I killed them because they were just one guy. Did you find the same? I found the boss is way easier than like a clump of normal guys.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. What they do is they just surround you, and they're all walking within a body's width of you. And they're doing this. They're just going back and forth, and it's impossible to
Yeah,
hit everybody before at least one of them hits you.
yeah.
And that's where I fell. I'm pretty sure I got to the very last like multi-guy part of the game before the final boss comes out, and I just couldn't beat all of the guys. They kept surrounding me and just kind of doing this thing.
You know, the end of this game. I remember when me and you played this. At the end of the level of the last level, there's this area where like you're getting cheap shotted. There's
Oh yeah.
Donkey Kong barrel axe, and these statues are hit you with spears. One would wonder if you could program a statue to do that. Why don't you just put guns in the statue? These bad guys are idiots. But at the very end of this game, the ultimate battle with the final boss to reclaim the remains of Marion is like the world's stupidest gang fight. Because what happens is about 10 guys come out and they just hover over you and
This
you
is
can
where
do
I died.
nothing.
This
You
is
get
where I died.
one shot.
Yeah.
And it's right because they don't give you any time to do anything. They're right over your corpse. And you get enough time of invincibility to get off one shot. And then you get crushed. Now, most wise people, Boat, like yourself, would give up because this is a waste of time and it's dumb. But not me, because I got time to kill. So I sat here, and if you're watching this at home, it's sad display. This is the end of the game, and I've got 8 minutes off this video, which means I take a beating for 8 straight minutes from these guys. And I get one shot per guy. It reminded me of my days played Crap Man, where you got one shot at getting that last dot, but you had to avoid 50 ghosts that were 10 times as fast, and they were all hovering around you and the dot. It's like, well, why am I playing this? The end of this game is the dirt worst. You heard
Yeah.
it here first. It's garbage. Could 2 people do better? I can't imagine doing worse. So I would assume so, but it sucks. It's also anticlimactic. You'll recall like, for example, say something like Final Fight, you kick the guy and he flies out a window. Remember how cool that was? This guy is just like any other geek. He comes out with a gun that he uses sparingly, and once I dispatched all these other freaks, beating the boss was a cakewalk. He just sat there while I crushed him, and then I won, and then the game was over. So the ending was not only unsatisfying, but it was anger-inducing. You can see if you're watching at home, every time I die, this crowd of thugs just hover right over my body and then murder me. That's the game. The AI in this is garbage, and it's no fun. It's a no fun game, and this ruined the game for me. This, especially this ending part, it's horrible. So, what are your final thoughts on this, Bode?
Give this one a miss. This one is, I mean, when you compare it to the first Double Dragon, it's a triumph because the first Double Dragon was so bad.
It was real bad, Bode.
But going back and playing this now is just there's nothing fun about it. It's a combination of bad controls, a arcade game that honestly is not that good, and AI that is just ridiculous. Like I said, we're watching the Thriller dance right now, where these two guys are just lumbering around. They take 2 steps to the left, kick, take 2 steps to the right, kick. So it's like watching the RKO girls, you know. And so the I don't know. I just don't have many things good to say about this game. But to be fair to the Amiga version, this was I played a lot of this in the arcade game when I had the arcade game, and there's a reason why I did not shed a tear when I sold the board and converted it to a main machine.
I was waiting for, did you sell the board in that?
Yeah, I sold it to Kraus.
Yeah, good. Stick him with it. I agree. I don't think this was that great of arcade game. I played the arcade version of this week. It plays better. Don't get me wrong. It's less remedial, you know, but it's still not that good. And this is worse. Is this better with 2 people? Sure, every beat 'em up is. It's more fun with 2 people. But why do you play a beat 'em up? All right, you play it to feel like a tough guy, like a stud. You're throwing suckers around. You're the King Dong. That's why you play it.
Right.
You know what I don't want to play it for? To have a bunch of geeks stomp me out every 3 seconds. That's what I don't play it for. I could get that in real life. If I went down to the bad part of town right now and picked a fight with a goof, that's what would happen. A bunch of goofs would gather around me and beat me down. This is a real life fighting simulator. I don't want that. I want a fake life where I'm a stud and I kick the crap out of other geeks. That's what I want. This does not pull that off. Now, with all that said, you mentioned something earlier that was true. The graphics are good in this, and there's no slowdown. They did a good job converting this from the arcade. The controls are, given what you had to work with, they're fine. I don't fault the developers of this all that much. I do blame them for the AI, but the rest of it, I thought they came pretty close to matching the arcade.
Yeah. I would say the graphics are 80% of the arcade version, which is not bad. Which is good.
Yeah. But I mean, again, this has happened to us before, where we covered a game that got converted to the Amiga, and they converted it to the Amiga. I mean, this isn't like Final Fight, where they did a really, really horrible job. They did a pretty good job for the most part. It's just that the game's not that good.
Yeah.
So you might be asking yourself, Bo, because I know how inquisitive you are. You may be saying to yourself, how did this score back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
The folks at Lemon give this a 7.16. We've played a lot of games that scored a lot worse than that. The lower score over at Hall of Light is 67%. The magazine reviews of the day, and there aren't a ton. A lot of them are later on. Ace gave this 720. The Amiga format folks gave this a 64%. Amiga Joker, 80. CU Amiga gave this an 80. The Games Machine, 83. They've got the average magazine rating here at a 68%. I think it's a fair. Appraisal. One thing I want to load in here before we get to the any other reviews we might have are that when this game was released, they realized, unfortunately too late, Bo, that this would only work on OCS machines due to a programming error. Whoops.
Oh no.
And so shortly after the release, Richard Applin became aware of the error and made a second version to provide for support for users with the ECS Amigas. I've also heard this game was a bear to copy because I had copy protection for days. I saw Galahad's name in the credits. I don't know if that's the Galahad that we all know and love, the famed cracker hacker type, but I bet it is. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a hand in the copy protection on this. Galahad, if you hear this, feel free to chime in and let us know. They eventually released a version for the U.S. only, version 4.16, that will run better on NTSC Amiga. But this game has all sorts of trouble, and even over at the Hall of Light, they recommend you play the WHD load version of this because it's the only one that's stable enough and bug-free enough to where you can get through it without having any problems.
We
Did we
got
get
some
any?
we
Yeah,
got some
go ahead.
Discord reviews here. First one comes from Pajako. He says, "It's no secret that I loathe the first game port, but this shows how in the right hands that a good arcade port is possible. The developers had to squeeze a 3-button game down to one, and for the most part they did a good job, and while it can be clunky at times, it does work. Not having directional attack buttons, which was a dumb idea, actually works in the Amiga version's favor. Graphics are pretty darn good, and although it's lacking sprites, without comparison, you won't miss anything, and it's all on one disc. Audio can be good because weirdly there is in-game music available to you, but you have to turn it on by pressing F2. It's a
Yeah.
bit chiptune sounding and unlike the arcade, but the game is much better with music. Otherwise, it's a very empty sounding experience. The minor problems for me are the collision detection, as you have to be on the same pixel line to get hits in. The other is the glitchy enemy movement with enemies moving up and down in unison, which looks weird. You can also seemingly control them as they will perfectly follow you up and down the screen at times. I made it about 2/3 of the way through after a couple of plays without cheating, but the game is very short at like 20 minutes on a good run. Like Dr. Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap, this second game puts right what once went wrong. 8 out of 10. BFB Triple I says, "How can a game with such a legendary title song, a bona fide classic, have an in-game song that will murder you and your pets and any living thing within earshot?
Wow.
Is
Wow.
Double Dragon 2 better than Double Dragon 1 on the Amiga? Yes. But does that mean that Double Dragon 2 is a good game, a respectable and worthy port to the Amiga from Binary Design? Not really, because unfortunately, being better than Double Dragon on the Amiga is a very low bar. This game plays like a late draft of a respectable Double Dragon 2 port. The elements required are mostly in place. I sure miss kneeing suckers in the head and flipping them over my shoulder because that's the most awesome thing ever, and it's completely absent, but I shouldn't be too greedy. The real problem, gameplay. Enemy behavior is silly. Hitbox that requires pixel perfect alignment is silly. And a final room, especially in 2-player mode with slowdown that resembles a flipbook on holiday, is silly. And it all seems extremely fixable if the devs had more time, better resources, and weren't attempting code to port to multiple computers at once, etc. But circumstances. So yes, Binary Design did a much better job here, and you can see obvious talent on display, no doubt. But the game on its own can't be higher than a 6.5 out of 10, especially with that murder music." That's going to do it for our Discord reviews, Aaron.
I think there's your fine appraisals, Bode. We didn't talk about the in-game music. I did. I wasn't that impressed with the in-game music, if I'm honest. I didn't use it that often, but I mean it was there if you wanted to do it. I looked this up on eBay. Uh, you could get this brand new and sealed for 54 bucks US.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm still not biting. You could get the now. This did have a bunch of budget releases. I saw budget releases at $17. I did see the PC version of this sold for $107 completed box. So that's pretty hefty.
Yeah.
Usually I'm a big fan of like grabbing the PC versions, the Tandy versions of games, just like put them on the shelf and just don't say nothing. That's sort of my bag. Yeah, because I'm so cheap. But this is not that game. This one actually, I don't know, maybe this is a rarity on the PC. And I will say, as much as this game angered me and pissed me off, I mean, it's not the worst. That's basically the highest praise that I could give this one, Bode.
Yeah, I agree.
Welcome to Retro Rewind. I'm your host, British Jones. Whether you're into the Amiga, Commodore 64, or Tiger floral print speed suits, Retro Rewind has all you need from the friendly hosers of the Great White North. Looking to upgrade your Amiga? Check out the Amiga OS 3.2.2 Kickstart ROM for just $18. Or maybe you need a C64 or C128 diagnostic harness. Grab one while they're hot. Don't miss our best sellers like the 1541 Transit Card for just $1, or the incredible Amiga Coin Cell Battery Adapter. Shop now at Retro Rewind Limited and bring your classic computers back to life. Retro Rewind Limited. Frank's the man.
Aaron, what are we playing next week?
Let's find out, Boater. Bam. It's Galaxian. Oh man, I can't wait for this one.
Now
Bud.
you are one of this game's sole defenders. Most people prefer Galaga
Am
all
I?
day long, but you
Yeah.
are there to defend Galaxian to the death.
Well, this game is the granddaddy of a lot of. I mean, among other things, having a really nice color, and among other things, it's a great high score challenge because the games aren't going to go that long.
Right.
So yeah, we'll get into this one for sure, Bud.
And as always, thank you for listening to this edition of the Amigos Summer of Arcade. If you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We will see you next week. And until then, adios.
Adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.